Okay, again, good afternoon. As a matter of procedure here, I think it's important for those, especially those that are watching live stream, or those in the audience, for each of us to identify who we are in case there is someone out there that doesn't know who we are, which you can imagine, but it's a possibility. So I'll start with our esteemed delegation, and we're kind of short on microphones, so if we could kind of just scooch that so the listening audience can hear, we would appreciate that, and we're sorry for that inconvenience.
I'm Trent Kettleman. I'm a delegate from District 9A, which includes Western Howard and the southern part of Carroll County.
Thank you all for coming. I'm Delegate April Rose, representing District 4 here at Central County. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Delegate Kathy Afsali. I represent a part of Carroll County that I'm sure everyone's interested in, and that would be the Mount Airy area. We have 4 representatives from that area. The other 3 have sent their regards. That is Senator Mike Huff, Delegate David Vogt, and Delegate Barry Silverberry were not able to be with us here today, so I'm representing them here today.
I'm Delegate Susan Krebs from District 5, and I try to represent the whole county.
Haven Shoemaker, Delegate, District 5, Carroll County.
Most of the land area of Carroll County. We're working with delegations from other parts of the county as well. Delegate Warren Miller also from District 9.
Good afternoon. My name is Kiefer Mitchell. I'm a special advisor for Governor Larry Hogan, and I'm representing the governor. Thank you.
Commissioner Doug Howard from our District 5.
Commissioner Dennis Frazier, District 3 Commissioner.
Commissioner Stephen Wance from District 1 and the current president of the Carroll County Board of Commissioners.
Commissioner Dick Weaver, Commissioner from District 2.
Commissioner Richard Rothschild from Carroll County District 4.
Virginia Harrison's Carroll County Public School Board.
Steve Guthrie, Superintendent of Schools, and I'd just like to take a minute to welcome everybody and thank you for coming. We've had this emergency meeting to help us deal with some difficult funding issues. I appreciate the delegation coming out on such short notice, members of the public, and certainly thank the commissioners for offering to let us join this meeting to ask questions and get further clarifications as we move forward to making some very difficult decisions.
I'm Jim Dolan, and I'm President of the Board of Education.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Seidel. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Education.
I'm Devin Rothschild, a member of the Board of Education.
Good afternoon, Bob Lord, member of the Board of Education.
Okay, once again, I will certainly echo what our Superintendent of Schools, Stephen Guthrie, has advised, and we would like to welcome everyone here. I know folks have busy lives, especially this time of year, and we certainly appreciate those that have made it a point to be here for what I believe is probably an unprecedented meeting. I'm not sure that we have ever had something to this degree in this county, perhaps ever. And regardless of how or what transpired to get us here, I want to thank each and every one of you who has been working hard on this certainly critical issue that we are facing here in Carroll. So thank you very much. On that note, I will ask Commissioner Howard at this point to roll on with the meeting here. Doug?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to share with you a letter that the Board of Commissioners put together earlier today. I read it at our session this morning and then sent it on. We want to take this opportunity to thank Governor Hogan for recognizing the need for additional education funding for Carroll County and other counties facing declining enrollment, and for taking the bold step to put $4.0 million into fiscal year 17's proposed budget. If this additional funding does survive the budget process, it will surely help us bridge the ongoing funding gap that we have experienced due to state formula funding and declining enrollment. We are hopeful that next year a new formula will help address our issue in a more permanent way. We appreciate members of our delegation that have made the state aware of our funding needs and who worked with the governor's office to get additional funding into the proposed budget. We are relying on them to continue that fight as they go through the legislative session on the budget and on a new education funding formula in the coming years. Together, along with the difficult decision being made by the Board of Education and difficult choices that must be made by the Board of County Commissioners during our own budget process, we are hopeful that substantial progress could be made towards addressing the education funding and teacher compensation issues that most threaten our excellent school systems. This is clearly the biggest challenge we face as a community, and we appreciate the efforts and cooperation of all of our partners in addressing the long-term needs of our county.
And beyond that, I would also like to read this statement that we also read at this morning's open session. And it's our affirmed position, if you will, on boundary line adjustment and school closures. The objective is to improve the quality of education and the morale of our classroom teachers. We believe significant strides can be made by reducing excess facility capacity, increasing efficiencies, and redirecting savings into salary increases for teachers and classroom personnel. One of the initial recommendations by the VAC reflected a savings of $7 million. However, this would not be sufficient to address salary issues. Therefore, our ability to help close any gap requires the Board of Education to go further by also restructuring to realize operating efficiencies as a result of redistricting. Finally, whereas Carroll County Public Schools enrollments will continue to decline, the majority of members of the Board of Commissioners are not likely to support substantial tax increases. Increases to Carroll County Public School funding will likely need to come from economic growth or the state. For this reason, it is imperative Carroll County Public Schools comprehensively reduce its cost structure to parallel enrollment declines. We know this process is painful, but it is necessary. However, we firmly believe the end result will lead to better compensated teachers and classroom personnel and a higher quality school system. Again, that statement was also read this morning in our open session and was passed by unanimous vote by the current County Board of Commissioners. Now, on that note, there were several of the commissioners that also had some comments after both of these were read, and we're going to mirror that activity before I turn the microphone over to the President of the Board of Education. So, Commissioner Rothschild.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming here on short notice. I think I've got a mic now. Just a couple of brief comments about this situation. I want to assure, first off, everyone that the analysis that we're going through as a Board of Commissioners is anything but an absolutist analysis. We understand there are various pros and cons of the situation. We understand the ins and outs. We understand the benefits. We understand the liabilities, the pros and cons. And I want to assure you that we're taking this extremely seriously. I want to address for a moment the $4 million. We appreciate the governor's gesture. But I want to point out that until the legislature goes through a session, that money cannot be deemed certain. It's still uncertain at this point in time. But even if we had that $4 million today, I want to point out that it doesn't change the fact that we have too many schools, too many vacant seats, and inefficiencies that are consuming precious tax dollars. And by consuming those tax dollars the way they are, they're making it more difficult for us to appropriately pay our teachers. And that's where the rubber meets the road with the teacher in the classroom. And therefore, it's my position that we must downsize. Now, suppose, just hypothetically, we started over, hypothetically. This is going to be a contentious decision. If we started over from scratch and came up with 5 new schools, 3 new schools, 7 new schools, there is absolutely no way, in my judgment, to go through this process without having contentiousness. So in light of that, I think we have to be realistic. And as an experienced business person, I personally believe that the worst thing we could do at this point in time would be to delay the process and do nothing. And for that reason, I stand with my Board of Commissioners. I stand with the Board of Education. in recommending that Carroll County proceed forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Weaver.
All right. We are in a situation where we do have to do something. Doing nothing is not an option at this point. And the commissioners, I do support our original objectives of the commissioners of what we have to do. However, I was elected to represent my constituents, and I need to push for their concerns. I don't think we need to close any high school in this county or any building that is in good repair. And I think if we would go back, we have to about January 30th, if my calculations are correct, to revisit and look at some of these items. Any project that increases capital expenditures down the road is the wrong decision, in my own opinion on this. But I am here to represent my constituents, and I intend to do that with whatever it takes. So thank you for listening.
Mr. Frazier.
Thank you. My position is that we should not delay this process. Putting this process off for a year, I don't think will do anything to help us out. Just be more divisiveness between the county and community arguing against community. I'm not for that at all. We've come to this, we haven't come, they're looking at a decision right now, they'll vote on it. I think we should need to move ahead with that. And with that, I wish to express my confidence that the Board of Education, the school system, and the Boundary Adjustment Committee have looked at all the options that were presented to them, and that they will make a decision based on what is best for Carroll County Public Schools and the children of our county. And I do believe that they have looked at everything. Thank you.
Commissioner Howard.
I want to go back to kind of where we started this discussion last time we met with the delegation. You all have seen this chart a number of times. And for us to address the problem, which is the intent of all of this activity, with a long-term plan, and something that started 6-7 months ago when the board started its activities to go through the boundary line adjustment process, but also when we formed a joint committee to work together to try to identify how we were going to ever tackle this issue so it didn't become a recurring divide in our county. We identified that the challenge was bigger than any one solution. It was going to require the Board of Commissioners, the Board of Education, and participation from the state to get us there. Now, the last time we met as a delegation, we talked about things like multiple years of hold harmless, significant savings from school closings and such. The fact is, a lot of us felt like those things were very far out there, very far a long shot for us to be able to even get a chance to take on what is the biggest challenge I think we have as a community. And I think through extraordinary hard work by the Board of Education, a lot of involvement from the community, work from our delegation, participation from the governor's office, we've now actually gotten to the point where we can see a possibility of being able to address what is the biggest challenge that we face. However, there'll be a lot of discussion about whether the money that has been proposed will actually be there, whether it will survive the budget process, what that looks like. But I'm here to remind you that even if it is there, even if you brought it with you today, which if you did, that's great, is that solves a piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't solve the other piece of the puzzle that still has to be accomplished by streamlining our system, or the piece that we have to solve. So if one piece takes out the other piece, we're still short. And if we put the entire community through this painful process to not get this issue addressed, to not get it resolved, then I think we've done a lousy job of taking the community down a path that it didn't need to get out in the first place. But the problem is we can't leave it unresolved. The only thing I would say otherwise is I believe the time for decision is upon us. And I think for us to respond as a Board of Commissioners, which is going to happen fairly soon in terms of funding options, any other implementation options that there might be, any other things that we might consider, we got to know what the decision is. We've got to know what's going to happen. So we have to know what course the Board of Education is going to take. And I believe that includes not only the recommendation that's before you right now, but the lingering recommendation, or if that's considered as well, of the other schools, because when we get the full playing field of what you're going to do, and we get the full understanding of what we may be able to get, not only now, but as the process goes forward at the state level, then it's really incumbent upon us to try to piece together the rest to get us as close as we can, and that's really what has to go forward. So appreciate everybody's participation, but that is the challenge in front of us, and I think it's important we don't lose sight of that.
And to wrap it up, and we're trying to mirror exactly what we did this morning, for those that didn't see it. I also address this from a personal standpoint, and with no disrespect to my colleagues, I've probably been dealing with this longer than anybody. I echo Commissioner Weaver's sentiments about being elected to represent your constituents. Right out of the gate, a year or so ago, I had the Charles Carroll issue come right to the top of my surface, if you will. I've certainly been working with those parents. I want to commend them for the way in which they have dealt with this. I think it certainly is it's admirable the way in which they have conducted themselves up there. They've been dealing with this longer than anybody. So I want to point that out, and I wanted to make sure that was said. I have always said that for me, it's more about people and not about buildings, and I continue to believe that. I have been a big proponent of making sure that on the back side of this, the most important folks, our kids, are taken care of, and certainly that our teachers and those that we put in front of our children are the number one priority. And in order to get that, to get to that place, some tough, challenging decisions have to be made. So again, I want to commend all of those that have been involved in this process. I will also point out that I think we are in uncharted territory here. I don't know that this county has ever been to this place before. I've had a lot of senior citizens in my district come to me and tell me, Commissioner, when Tawnytown High School was proposed to be closed, and they were going to build Francis Scott Key 8 miles out of town, we thought that the town was doomed. It's still there. So I hear it from all aspects of where I am. So again, I want to point out that we would like to thank all of you for the hard work, the challenging decisions that are ahead. And I think the statements that we have made here today speak for themselves. On that note, I would like to pass the meeting to the President of the Board, Mr. Doolin. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wance. On behalf of the Board of Education, I do want to thank everyone for coming. This is typical of how things happen in Carroll County, and that is there was a need, and you all responded, and we appreciate that very much. And we appreciate the commissioners, and thank you for letting us be a part of your joint meeting and using the focal point of the governor's announcement the other night for clarification. And that's what you're going to hear from us in the next few minutes, is that when we were at the one of our open hearings, and Mr. Shoemaker presented along with Mr. Reedy the governor's proposal, that was the first time we had heard of that, and we asked at that very time, we have very questions in regards to the continuity of that and the sustainability of that, and those dilemmas and those questions, which we'll go over in a minute, are things that we sort of need to be answered as part of our process. But I do want to say that the cooperative effort that we've had with our local county commissioners through this funding process has been the best it's been in many, many years, and we're hopeful that no matter what the results of this, that continues. That we have a committee, a joint committee, that is part of a 5-year funding plan. Instead of looking 1 year at a time, we're trying to look together with the county commissioners of a 5-year proposal, and that collaborative effort has been excellent so far, and we want that continued support. You'll hear us say we want continued support from our delegation on not only the hold harmless money, but the new funding formula that will eventually come out, and then the implementation of that, and your support of that is obviously something that's one of our positions. We do appreciate the request from the governor, as we said, and the biggest question that we had, and we'll go over that right now, and some of that is the sustainability and how you end up utilizing that kind of situation or that money if it were to come about, and what the process of that is. But again, I want to reiterate the three-pronged approach that's been mentioned. You all as state delegates and senators are certainly a part of the state funding and a big part of our formula. The county commissioners and the county government is the next biggest partner that we have, and then the Board of Education and what we've had to look at in the past with underfunding and the cuts and things we made, and where we've got to look at for the efficiencies as we go forward. So this is an ongoing process, not a one-time deal or a one-time issue. This is an ongoing of all those issues. I believe several commissioners alluded to that. With that, let me open it with the fact of the Board of Education's dilemma, so to speak. The uncertainty of the legislative success of a proposed budget. And as we understand it, the governor's proposed is a proposed budget and not other money somewhere else. And that's one of the clarifications we'd like to seek today to reinforce, as our interpretation that it's proposed money would have to go through the legislative process and then have to be approved, even at the amounts mentioned, or some amount.
You want to tackle these maybe one at a time?
Yeah.
Sure, we can do that.
I actually like to just introduce Keith Mitchell really quickly again to say that we appreciate him being here. He served with Delegate President Nine and Delegate Valley in the House of Delegates for 4 years. Has a really good background in state policy, so he served on the budget committee actually. So, oh, that's where you are.
Welcome, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here.
And so, this is something, the money that we have, committed from the governor and in the budget is something that, we all took different tacks, but our delegation was working towards. We've been working towards getting funding help, as we committed to you a couple of months ago when we had our meeting, that 50-50 hold harmless is really our top priority. Obviously, this maybe goes a little beyond that. And we're continuing to work for finding help for our commissioners as well, that might free up money for them to help more, as well as more money from the state. So we're within the context of needing our state to get back on the right path of fiscal responsibility, we're trying to work to see if we can't correct some historical inequities that have happened. It's not just us, but some other counties in the state. And I think that's the genesis of the governor wanting to not just to help us because of the specific situation, but wanting to look at long term. There's been some reasons why we've lost enrollment, and there's been some historic inequity with what happens when you lose enrollment. And I think the governor's trying to address that. As far as the likelihood of surviving the budget process, we all can give you our opinion, but I think maybe we'll let Mr. Mitchell talk about that.
Thank you, Senator, and I want to like thank the commissioners and the school board for allowing me to come and represent the governor. I just want to go just through sort of a timeline of facts how we got to where we are today. What happened was the governor had expressed some concern about the closing of schools after reading news reports about it a few months ago, and he wanted to help. So we fast forward into November of this year, the governor received a letter from Delegate Shoemaker regarding some of the school closings in his district, and asked the governor to intervene through his office. The governor's staff had meetings with the Carroll County delegation in terms of this issue. On Wednesday, the governor had a quick meeting with Senator Reedy, and the governor had said that he would forward over the funding for that, and so that's how we got here. Let me make it very clear that this is a stopgap measure. It is intended to be a one-time grant for this process. And the reason that being is that in June of this year, 2016, there's a report due on the adequacy study as it relates to the geographic costs of education and spending. So it is our hope, it is the governor's hope that once that report comes through, there would be a more clear path or a clear picture in terms of funding due to the adequacy study. However, if that study is not complete by June, the fiscal year begins July 1st, the governor does intend to continue to help fund the school system here in Carroll County. But it is our sincere hope that that adequacy study report will be completed in June of 2016. The governor also wants to make it clear that in his letter that he wrote, he does express that it is his hope with this funding that the closing of schools will be deferred. However, I am here with the message that the funding is not contingent upon your decision either way for that. So this is as I said, it's a one-time grant for the Carroll County public school system. The other piece I just wanted to say is that in 2013, and my former colleagues may be able to acknowledge this, there was budget language for funding of the Carroll County Public Schools as it relates to the Geographic Cost Index, Education Index. However, the previous administration never funded that. And in 2014, there was also language to hold harmless Carroll County schools and other jurisdictions. However, that language was taken out. So the governor felt that these counties have been treated unfairly, and you can see that in terms of the budget. And I know that one of the questions that you have had, how did we get to the number of $4 million? So in the 5 years of the fiscal 5 years from starting fiscal year 11 through fiscal year 17, the jurisdictions of Carroll, Garrett, Kent County had significant drops in enrollment. And those percentages were, for instance, in Carroll County, the enrollment dropped 7%. In Garrett County, the enrollment dropped 11%. And in Kent County, it dropped 4%. However, the change in education funding was much higher than the enrollment drops. So, for instance, in Carroll County, the shortchange or the cut in funding was 9%. In Garrett County, the cut was 17, you can say 18%. And in Kent County, it was a 7% drop. So the governor felt that these jurisdictions had been treated unfairly as it relates to the proportion of cuts in funding and also in terms of enrollment decline. So coming up with the $4 million, this basically comes out in the math, and believe me, I'm not a math expert, but from talking to our budget people, it equates to about a 25% increase, restoration of the funding. So that's what I just wanted to reiterate to this. And again, as I said, the governor is interested from his intent from talking with the members of the delegation of trying to defer it. However, recognizing this is a local issue and it's best left up to local boards and commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I ask you a
Mitchell.
question? You keep talking about the grants, and historically, when we get a grant, it's money that's already been allocated and is there to grant to people. And we're getting, I think, mixed up in that term grants, because we get grants all the time that's already allocated money. Is this money that is being placed in the budget, or is it already money that exists to hand as a grant?
This is not money that's already existing.
So
This is in the
really
fiscal year 2017.
So it's proposed budget.
In the proposed budget coming up that you will be voting
Because I
on.
will tell you, the word grants is, a grant is something that's already allocated and you can give away. And I think that's been a confusion of the term being used grant, because it's not already allocated to be given away.
Right, but in terms of the historical context of the GCEI funding has always been termed as a grant through the budget process. So this is the GCEI funding that was.
I mean, the good news is we have a governor that's finally recognized this issue with all the counties that have lost enrollment and relative wealth. So that's the good news. I mean, the bad news is for years we've been trying very hard to get this whole harmless money for the counties that have been suffering. And even when we passed and got through the legislature, the previous governor never funded it. So that, we've been working on this for several years, and we do need to right the wrong, and we appreciate very much that we finally have a governor that's going to acknowledge it. But I want to say it's not going to be an easy lift with the legislature keeping it in there. We're going to try very hard, but it's been a challenge for the last couple of years. But having a governor acknowledging what has happened in our county, we send him our thanks for that, because that's a big, big step.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. And in fact, you clarified some of the questions that we had, particularly in regards to exactly what Mrs. Krebs just said, whether it was a grant or proposal and it's got to go through the legislative process to get approved. That doesn't negate the fact that he was willing to put that money in there and try and go there. And that is exactly a very positive thing, and we appreciate that.
And let me speak to that point real quickly. As you know, the governor came in January of this year. The legislature was already in session. He, in fact, had about maybe 2 or 3 days to actually put together a budget formally prior as he was coming into office. It was a tough fiscal year. It was a tough budget process. The governor wanted to do something this current year. However, because of the budget and negotiations, things like that, we just couldn't do it. Now that there is, the governor's made some tough decisions in the increase of school funding of close to $6 billion statewide. That investment now allows for us to start making plans for the next fiscal year and beyond.
Which is good, Mr. Shoemaker.
Since you allude to that, last year, which is the current fiscal year, as a practical matter, since the governor hadn't been able to fully fund GCEI last year, it would have been a particularly hard sell last year to include this stopgap type money that we're talking about for Carroll County this year. Isn't that correct?
Just as a point of clarification, Jim, I think we're speaking the same language. It's not that the governor put the money in; he put the proposal in the budget before the money.
Yes, and that's the clarification we were seeking here today is, and you've heard us use the word sustainable, and Mr. Guthrie will through some questions and comments that will clarify that partially, because one of the questions that we, as a board, when we talked about dilemmas, and it's been talked about today, is that one of the, what we've got to weigh into our whole process here is the sustainability of that funding the following year. We take that in and make it part of our operating budget, and if for some reason it doesn't get passed, or it's up for grabs again the next year, and the whole Honda's law itself doesn't change in some way that goes away, that's every year, then that addresses another issue for us that we have to weigh in and have to make part of our decision is the sustainability of those funds. Mr. Shoemaker?
But as Mr. Mitchell alluded to, and I've received the same confirmation from the governor's office, if the adequacy study, studying the Thornton formula that should have been done 5 years ago, isn't done by next year, the governor is willing to go back to the well and provide this stopgap funding again in his proposed budget for the FY18.
Which is also appreciated, and I guess if we had a crystal ball and knew what April 12th was, or whenever the end of your legislative session was, how these funds really fall out, and how much a piece of that pie of our total needs in the future, that would be helpful, but we can't do that.
Yeah, I used the illustration the other day that, I wish I could have brought one of those Happy Gilmore $4 million checks with me to hand over to you all, but it does have to go through the process.
We would accept it if you brought it.
It is true that if something is in the book, it's obviously much greater chance than us trying to do it without it.
Correct.
It also is true that there is some historical context for doing this. But we certainly don't want to be responsible and suggest for us, I think looking at it to be an opportunity to give people breathing room and flexibility. And I have some thoughts about the process that we can talk about.
Can I interject a question?
Sure,
Because
of course.
are we suggesting that if the stopgap funding is required again next year, that would also come with a request to hold off closures for another year?
No, I don't think that's what I said.
I'm just asking. I'm
What
just
I
trying to
said
understand.
was, I believe what I said was that, can somebody play back the tape? What I believe I said was that if the adequacy study has not been done by next summer, like it's anticipated today, that the governor is going to, re-entertain this notion of providing stopgap funding for jurisdictions like ours and Kent County and Garrett, like he did this year.
But not to avoid closures, just to deal with whatever shortfall you have.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask Mr. Guthrie to make some comments and some clarification and questions, please.
First of all, thank you again for coming. I do appreciate the opportunity to talk and clarify. Delegate Shoemaker, Senator Reedy, I again express thank you to you for pushing the envelope and getting this.
Let me interject. I want to give this clear too, because we all have been working.
Okay. You were the faces at the meeting, so.
Well, I mean, I came to the meeting, but I wanted to be clear, delegation, all of us saying that these are the major priorities for our county, and our first priority is funding them. And we did discuss the school both. We both did about this example of the situation that we were in. So I just wanted to get that clear because I do think that, you know, it's a team effort, and it's going to have to be a team effort. So I appreciate the thanks, but I want to be sure it's appropriate.
And I want to also say, this has not just been this year. I've spent more time on this issue than anything I've worked on in the legislature for the last 3 years. So it's been a huge amount of effort, and we were hitting a brick wall with the former governor. Even when it was put in the budget, the former governor wouldn't fund it. It's sort of like the GCI we talk about as a grant. The GCI money was in the budget. The governor decided that he wanted to use it for something more responsible, which is funding the pensions instead of the. So it is a grant because it was already in the budget, but our governor decided to do the fiscally responsible thing and use it for something that he would already promised. So we have worked very hard. We now have a team of people to work with, and that's a huge sea change than what we had in the past. So this has not just been something that's happened this month, last month. This has been going on for 3 years that we worked with us. Before some folks were even here in the legislature. In the legislature, we worked with our last delegation, and it was very challenging. And we're thrilled to death, again, to have a governor that appreciates the rural counties and what we're experiencing in the rural counties, the declining enrollment for many reasons, some of which have been imposed by the legislature, past legislatures. So it's a sea change of what we're trying to do to operate. So we acknowledge that, and we're all very excited about it.
Thank you. Again, let me express my thanks then to all for all of your work over past years and this year. I do realize this year is materially different because there actually is a proposed increase to Carroll County Public Schools as opposed to $8.5 million worth of decreases from 2009 up to this point, which considerably put us behind the 8 ball as far as compensation improvements to the system. And we've had to take drastic actions, including losing 50 teacher positions last year as a result of that, just to make ends meet and pay at least 1 of 2 years of increase in employees, the base salary of employees. So we really appreciate, and again, Mr. Mitchell, thank you for your participation in that. Many of the questions we have been answered in our introductory comments, and we do appreciate that. One of the concerns that we had was what Commissioner Howard just expressed, is that there are 3 different contributions to make this thing work. We cannot close schools as a way to get out of our fiscal difficulties. We can't do it. We can't close 3 schools or 4 schools or 7 schools a year. We can't do it. Obviously, that is only a temporary way to go. There has to be some sustainable revenue increases after we finish this process. So the 3 buckets, as Commissioner Howard put forward, are us reducing our operating costs, increases from the county, the local government, and increases from the state government. So the $4 million certainly contributes to that. The total increases that we need for next year to make everything work and put together a fair compensation package that's compatible with raises other jurisdictions are receiving. And let me just make it clear, we aren't bringing our teachers up to competitive salaries. We're nowhere close to that. But what we want to do is stop the continuing loss that teachers are receiving and employees are receiving as compared with other counties. So make no mistake, there is no compensation package that we can put together this year that will fix 6 years of no step increases and 5 years of no cost of living increases. It just won't happen. So what we're trying to do is work on a compensation package that provides raises or compensation increases comparable to what other counties are receiving. That with inflationary increases and no other improvements is about a $14 million increase in our budget from this year's compared to next year. It's $11 million different than what the county has allocated in their current 5-year operating plan. So they have allocated increase for us. The delta is about $11 million. So this $4 million certainly goes a long way with that. So one of our concerns is the number one priority of our Board of Education and the Board of Commissioners, and certainly thoughts expressed by the delegation, is to provide those competitive raises. So we need about $14 million to be able to do that total between the 3, between operating, freeing up our own discretionary revenue through lowering operating costs, taking an increase from the county government, and certainly this $4 million will help. I agree with you, Delegate Krebs. I spent Friday in Annapolis. We checked with all our contacts down there. The governor's letter was addressed to the president of my organization, and we have a legislative person there who made several calls. We received the same information you just expressed, that it does have to go through the legislative process. We don't know whether the players are going to be involved. We hope that with the governor behind it, it has a good chance of getting through, but that's far from certain at this point, because we've heard from other delegations and other representatives and even U.S. senators, there is some concern that everybody's going to have their hand out, not just the 3 counties, but everybody else. What about us? What about giving money to us? I've heard from Prince George's County and St. Mary's County who expressed concerns that they were left out of the funding formula. So that dance will go on during the legislative session, there's no doubt. We're also thankful for the clarification the commissioners gave us this morning that continuing the process of school closure is an expectation of the local government. Just to clarify that, we have a capacity of 31,000 seats across the system. Our enrollment is down to 25,500. Our enrollment projections showing us dropping another 2,500 over the next 10 years. As we continue to look out, that enrollment drop of about the average of about 400 students a year continues in the out years. So this is something we're going to be continuing to deal with. And I said closing schools isn't the way out of this. It is part of it, because we have to provide efficiencies within our system and provide the same educational opportunities at all schools for students, regardless of the number of students. And at this point, because we have 25,000 students and capacity of 31,000 students, we are inefficient. We are overstaffed for teachers. We have classes of 13 and 14 going on in some schools and 30 in others, given the number of students in that school. There is great advantage to having small schools. Absolutely. I agree with all the citizen participation we had that says good education is going on at those schools. It is. I agree. They're wonderful teachers and providing wonderful opportunities for students. The question is, we have to pay for it. We have to pay for it. And right now, we don't have the revenue stream to pay for it. So if we don't act to reduce our operating costs, then the money between the 2 other entities is going to have to increase. And that's the dilemma that we're dealing with. So this is a part of the process. We are happy to go through it. We're overjoyed at the state coming forward. We're very complimentary and thankful for the governor coming giving us this information. Quite frankly, it's more than we expected. We have to consider how that affects the process at this point, because it doesn't solve all our problems, but it helps. It certainly helps. And so we have to make that decision. There is one point. We keep talking about $4 million, and I know Delegate Shoemaker talked about 5.2. I do want to bring a clarification of that, why we're not talking about 5.2. And that is the governor did fund half of GCEI. The remaining half is 1.2. Because we cut 50 teachers last year, we did some other reductions. I reduced instructional programs, and over the past since 2009, we've been cutting significantly. I did not want to take another $1.2 million in reducing our infrastructure, so I did not take that. So that 1.2 is in our budget for next year. In other words, I didn't take another $1.2 million worth of reductions. I've said that at every public board meeting we've had. It's in our financial statements. We have a deficit of right now of $1.2 million. I have the money sitting in fund balance that if we needed to rectify our budget, then we'll pull it over at the end of the year. But right now, I've made a determination to reduce our costs by $1.2 million by hiring freezes, holding positions, not spending money where we've allocated it to try to save that $1.2 million over the cost over the duration of this year. So I don't need to pull that money out of fund balance. But the reality of our budget is that $1.2 million in there. So it's really a wash. Again, we're very appreciative of it. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't add to our budget. It just sustains it at its current level. So that's why we're talking about $4 million instead of 1.2. So just to summarize, what I've heard was that the commissioners still have the same expectation to lower operating costs, to reduce our overheads and right-size our system with the number of students we have, that this money from the governor has to go through the legislative process. The governor's offering opportunity for us to revisit some of the decisions, but it's not contingent on that. And so we'll consider that, and I'll consider that as over the next day or two I continue to reflect on the feedback and continue to look at this new revenue picture as I try to come up with the best solution to this overall financial picture. One other thing that I really liked hearing was the fact that should the adequacy study not be passed into law, which provides some sustainable relief, that the governor is willing to look at this again. So we aren't stuck with increasing teacher compensation with $4 million that doesn't exist the next year. So that was very good to hear, and that certainly adds another dimension to what we have to consider.
You talked about the adequacy study. We mentioned this at your board meeting. The adequacy study is very, very intricate and has many parts to it. We can't follow all of those parts, and you have staff that's doing that. Let us know, and even the governor's office, Mitchell is the education liaison. We need the feedback on how this is moving along. We've been working on it for a year. We want to make sure the rural counties and counties like ours are going to benefit from the recommendations that come out. So
well,
there's many parts to it.
Delegate Krebs, I receive periodic updates. I'm past president of my organization, the superintendent's organization. We do have one of our staff members on it, Mr. Hartlove, who's our CFO. And basically, our exam discussion last month was that there is strong indication from the committee, at least the firm that's doing the study, is that this is a reshuffling of funding, not new money. And so everybody's going to have their hand out. And so if we're simply reshuffling money, that means that if we're going to get additional funding because of sustainability, even with declining enrollments, that money's coming from another county. It's not new money being generated into the system, which lends difficulties to organizations who have memberships from all over, such as MAVE and PSAM, to support a reshuffling of money, because if you support a reshuffling of money, then you're supporting taking the money away from other counties and giving to less wealthy counties. So I'm not sure how it all play out, but right now our hope was that there would be additional money coming as opposed to reshuffling of existing state funding.
If I could. Mr. Mitchell was pretty clear that the governor is not tying your hands in connection with this $4 million. But he does state pretty clearly in his letter, the next to last sentence, and I'm going to repeat it. It's my belief that this additional financial aid to Carroll County will allow local leaders to defer school closings being considered for next year so that time is available for a more comprehensive plan tailored to ensure the students' educational needs are protected during a transition year. So, I mean, I do believe that that's his wish, and I would ask that you all consider that.
I appreciate
that. Has also said that the governor thinks that you should leave local issues to local officials. That would be, we were looking at what to do with that.
Well, he also didn't have to include this extra $4 million in stopgap funding to help you all as you go through this process.
You have to acknowledge the fact that whether it's $5 million or $4 million because of the school closing, or $4 million because of money that comes out of the budget process, if one trades off the other, it's the same $4 million. And so when we sit here and say, well, $4 million plus whatever we could possibly do, because I read an article you wrote that said don't increase taxes either. So you didn't like that option either. I know you fought hard for teacher compensation, so I'm not sure what other genie we're supposed to pull out of the bottle here, but if 4,000 doesn't get us there, and we can't tax our way there, what would you like us to do?
Well, I got to tell you, Commissioner Howard, that wasn't my quote. That was a quote from the governor's
I understand.
letter. I'm just stating that
you
for the
reiterate,
record.
because I'm sure you agree with it. I agree with the sentiment as well, but my problem is I'm not sure that it's been fully explained that that money, we need help in addition to where the school closings would get us. And so at the end of the day, if we just trade one set of dollars for another and put off a decision for a year, all we've really done is taken good money and put it out there to put off a decision a year, but we haven't addressed anything. And we're no closer to being able to tax our way into the solution, which you don't want us to do. So I don't know what we do with that.
When we have a delegate who hasn't spoken yet, go ahead. All right, Carol.
I haven't seen the plan. As I understand it, you all have come up with a plan, which is something that's taken a lot of time, effort, and energy, and is ready to be implemented. How much money was saved if you do whatever you had suggested in that plan?
Roughly $5 million. It's core cost.
Maybe opportunities for additional savings.
Correct.
Mr. Reddy.
I sort of want to ask a question about the process, because I think that, I understand what you guys have all said, that most boards have said today, we don't want a year delay. I mean, that's pretty clear in both statements. One of the questions that I have, I know that the job of the board and the superintendent staff particularly is to look at the financial bottom line, but also the educational outcomes and educational opportunities for the people. And I respect that, and I know that that's your intention. And I think we're all elected officials here. Almost everybody who's sitting on the table is elected. And our role is also trying to listen to people and getting input from people. And people often don't have all the information, but they have very strong feelings about things. One of the things that I think is most interesting is if you were somebody, we all in this group here, other than maybe people that hasn't been involved in the all of us here, we've known for a long time that the issue of school closing was something that was going to happen at some point. And I'm not sure it came up in the elections as much as it should have. The school board or other offices, I know it came up some in the school board committee for elections. But we all feel like we've been dealing with this for years, and we have. But the public, in September, hears this plan to close the schools, and for a lot of people in the public, it comes out of nowhere. And, you know, you've got the DAC, the group of youth trying to close the doors. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying that is part of this whole factor. What I'm wondering, is there a way for us to give a little more time, not with a year, but to have, there's some things I know you couldn't evaluate. School board members have said that there are things that you couldn't necessarily evaluate, or plans that you didn't have the staff, maybe not the staff to look at.
Is there something specific you're referring to, a specific question that someone asked, or?
Well, what I'm wondering is this: if you don't have perhaps the expertise to look at things like economic impact facilities, is there an opportunity?
Let me clarify.
I know I'm rambling a little bit. I apologize. I'm just trying to give you a sense of what we're doing. A lot of us are doing. And believe me,
Well, we were sitting there for 6 hours last week, too, hearing it. I mean, it's not just you.
No. What I'm trying to relate is I'm hearing from people. And I've heard from people who told me, just let all this happen, and stay out of it too. And I respect everybody's input. The question is, is there a way for us to have the process elongated slightly so that we can get more outside input? People in communities can become more comfortable with this idea.
One of the comments you're stating is something that was quoted in the paper that was not a complete quote in regards to mine.
Other people have said.
Well, I know, but let me clarify that so that we can get that on the table itself. And when I said that we as a board do not have the staff or the ability to evaluate plans, that's not our job. That is Mr. Guthrie and his staff's job, and then to make a recommendation to us. And that's the clarification I was making. Of this board, the only one that has any personal experience in redistricting that is myself in regards to lots of years of that. That's not an expectation of an elected board to evaluate every plan to the minute detail and check out the math and make sure the statistics are correct or whatever. So that article in the paper, when I said that, was actually stating that the staff and Mr. Guthrie's job and staff does, and they do evaluate those plans and make recommendations back to us. So I need to clarify that because that's been tossed around at several public hearings that the board has said. The board as a group has not said that at all. I made it as a statement to the press that was an elongated statement, so only part of it was quoted.
I've had that happen.
And so I just wanted to clarify that in regards to the evaluation of that.
Let me say this. essentially, I support closing, and I've said that. I've told everyone about that. I support the closing. I support doing it. I even support doing it this year. I understand that that's what we have to do. What I'm asking about is you can, 5 board members are able to direct that. If there's, what I'm trying to say is if there's any uncertainty, if there's any uncertainty, if you feel like you should have a little more time, I'm not talking about having more necessarily public hearings, although maybe having meetings with people around the county in a small group where it's controlled so you can have some feedback and back and forth and try to just debunk maybe some things that have been out there that aren't true. I don't think that would be bad. I'm trying to separate it from the argument about just delaying for a year. It seems pretty clear that there's no appetite for that. Maybe that doesn't make financial sense. But could we delay for, I understand it's a short timetable because the school closed. I mean, all. It's just any school. But another 60 days. Plus, by then, we may have a much better idea of our situation in the General Assembly within the next 60 days. That's what I'm putting out there for board members' comment and just for consideration.
I'd like to say something. First of all, as a parent just 1 year ago, there is never I never would have thought in a million years that I would be sitting at a table with 15 other elected officials who are all fighting for education in Carroll County. And it is, I know we all have different ideas and we're coming from different places, but we are all sitting up here saying we want to do what's best for our school system. And to me, that is incredible, and it's something that, and it happened to me last week as I was sitting there for 6 hours getting yelled at over and over and over again. Part of me was thinking, this is incredible, because there are so many people here fighting for their kids and their schools and this county, and they may not like the process, they may not like what we're doing, but they believe our schools are worth fighting for. So to me, this has been tough for all of us, but I keep that in my mind, and I think this is really, really incredible. So that, I just wanted to get that out there. But the other, the goal, I know the goal has been, it's been focused on publicly that we need to save money, but for me, that has been a secondary aspect of this process. For me, the goal has been to improve our instructional program, which means offering full programs at all of our high schools, offering equitable programs at all of our schools, and improving teacher salaries. So my concern, and I do hear what you're saying, and of course we've been listening to the public, and I understand, my concern with delaying the process is this. Delaying for 1 year does not improve our instructional program. It does not improve teacher salaries. It does not decrease the number of empty seats and increase efficiencies. So, that's the struggle there. And the other thing is, in January, high schools start their scheduling process. So if you wait, you're waiting 60 days, 90 days, however many days you're waiting, you're putting those schools, those high school families don't know where they're going. We can't start our scheduling process. They don't know what schools they're taking. We can't staff. There's a lot of things going on. So that is what I want to say.
And I would like to add to that, because we have been at this for a lot of years, ever since I've been on the board, and we have cut cleaning staff, maintenance. We changed the budget schedule. We even changed our board meeting. We used to meet twice a month. Now we meet once a month. We have cut, and we've cut. And last year, Mr. Guthrie said to everyone, there is nowhere else to cut. And we had asked, keep our teachers. Let's stay away from the teachers, because we want to give our kids the best education we possibly can give them. And yes, what Governor Hogan is doing is wonderful, but it's some things that we cannot afford to do. And like Ms. Rothschild said, it's all about our kids. We've lost teachers. We can't hire the best teachers now. We haven't given our teachers a raise in 6 years. And any other options that we have, it may take 2 or 3 years to put that in action. And that's 9 years we haven't given our teachers a raise. We cannot keep doing that. And we're losing our good teachers. I really hate to see a teacher get an award, because 9 times out of 10, they're gone. They're gone to Howard County. Howard County love us because they have our good teachers.
want to go back to Senator Reedy's question. It's a fair question, and it's a responsible question. Is my mic working? It's a fair question. It's a responsible question, and I had a discussion with Superintendent Guthrie a couple of days ago, and I think that question has a premise that may not be correct. Commissioner Howard, you made a statement this morning about we have to be careful that we don't do questions that may have a premise that might not be correct. And I think, and I could be wrong, but the premise, at least when the public asks the question, is a perception that some of the other creative ideas that we put on the table were not vetted or considered by the BAC. And in my discussions with members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Guthrie, I don't get that impression at all. Could you address that, Mr. Guthrie?
Certainly. Yes, we received lots of public feedback. Some were thoughts, some were ideas. And I will say there wasn't a lot of consistency to what we received. We received a number of emails today saying move forward, don't delay. We received a number of emails today that said do delay. We received over the course of 6 hours, and we've received probably close to 4,000 emails, but if you take out duplicates of the same person writing 10 times, there were about 1,500 separate individual emails. And again, we closed more schools, close less schools, don't close any schools, redistrict first, don't redistrict, cut staff, find other avenues of revenue. There was no consistency to the information received. The only consistency we received was a majority of the people in the schools that are being potentially targeted for closure. The majority of those people were against that closure for a variety of reasons. And most of it was because there's good education happening in those schools, and I agree with them, as I said. But to answer so the answer to that question, yes, every plan that was submitted to us, regardless of it, if it had it wasn't just an idea, it was actually a plan, was reviewed. And in fact, a lot of those plans or components of those plans were discussed at work sessions, at 2 different work sessions that we had to let them know that they were vetted. But I want to get back to your original question. The question is, can we delay? In my every
I would not call it delay. I would call elongating the process, increasing more input from experts in areas maybe the BAC did not have access. Is that a fair question?
Yes, I can certainly respond to that. I can just say every delay, if we delay a month, we're into course election. So delay of 60 days is a delay of a year. We couldn't implement this. If we get past student course elections, and I've said this already, my expectation is that this decision would have been made in November and not December. I benchmarked after meeting with staff and talking to the various transitions that would happen. If we get into January, it's exceedingly difficult to do everything that we need to do and double check and make sure that everything gets done to close 3 schools and redistrict the students, and all of the staffing implications of that would be very difficult to do. And I wouldn't venture to do it if we get past January. It's just too much to do in 1 year. And that's one of the reasons that I broke it into 2 years and saying we can't do 7 schools in 1 year without significant hardships, not only on staff who would have to implement it, but on layoffs. It would just be very difficult to do.
Let me interject something here. The purpose of today's meeting was primarily to get a clarification on the governor's letter, and that's what we called for. And obviously, your opinion, or Mr. Reed, you've made that clear either in the press or to a letter to us in regards to that, is considered by the board and by the committee and by anybody that sends in. And I would like not to end this up being an open, this is now changing the format of this meeting into a dialogue as to the meeting or the decision itself. We're considering, you've stated to us before what you've reiterated today. And I'd like to say that I appreciate on behalf of our board what was discussed today, particularly from Mr. Mitchell, the clarification from the governor and all the delegates in being here and what that means. And we have to take into account the proposal and the fact of the $5.2 million, and compensation has been one of our top priorities as the Board of Education, however we get there, and we'll have to consider all this information and considering and Mr. Guthrie by tomorrow night to make a decision of that. I have to reiterate that the Board of Education is not a political position. It's not a party position. We run not a non-party. When we run, you don't declare that. It is a nonpartisan. There's a reason for that, though. And I have to say this on behalf, because one of the little barbs sort of in the governor's letter was make sure that we can take in consideration the educational needs of our students. That's what we do every day and every month and everything that we do. And I have to say on behalf of our board, and we work well together, that we're always going to make a decision that we believe is in the best interest of the students and the school system, no matter what that decision is. And I think we've done that since we've been on the board, and we will continue to do it, whatever that decision is. So I'd like to just draw the meeting back to the purpose of the meeting today and what we talked about, and appreciate that. And I appreciate the questions, but it's not new information or new dialogue that we've heard in regards to, we have to consider what Mr. Delta has considered as a part of that.
I'll close with this. To be honest with you, my question is not about whether you look at every single plan or not, and in my own opinion, I've made very clear. That's why I asked the question about the process. I think what I'm going to be saying is this is a great system. There is not a bad, and I want you all to know that. I mean, I really, we come from different political persuasions sometimes, we come from different ideals. I agree with your teacher and staff compensation, we have to address it. So I understand that. And it's pretty specific. And no matter the problems we had with funding or with the lack of student growth from a number of perspectives in our county, you know, it's really a credit, I think, to our teachers, our students, parents, and administration. You know, we do have a great system. There's not a bad school in Carroll County. So let me end on a positive note. My questions were more about, is there any way for the process to be extended a little bit? So I appreciate your interest.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any?
I actually have a question. And I do appreciate all of the hard work you've put into the process. Just with the dialogue, and I know it's not the plan, just a couple questions that I had. You mentioned about the teacher cutting positions. Do you have a number on how many positions would be cut if we went forward with the plan that you have currently?
You mean if we close schools, would I need to cut teacher positions?
If you close just the plan that you have proposed right now. I'm just curious what that number would be. And then I just have one other question.
Well, ultimately, that answer would depend on the amount of revenue I get ultimately from the state and from the county. That would make that decision after that. Right now, we are in a need of additional teachers, not specific to classroom, but I will say that I've put in my budget every year except the last year because we just know we were going to get it. We are in need of additional special education teachers, resource teachers, and gifted and talented teachers. I believe that we're meeting the minimum standards of the law in those areas. I would like to expand our offerings in that. So my hope would be with sufficient revenue, instead of decreasing students to teachers with respect consistent with declining enrollment, I can take those attrition positions and repurpose those into those positions to all add workload relief for our teachers and also provide better services to our students. Failing that, generally if we lose another 400 students, that translates to about 20 teacher positions.
But the positions, excuse me, I think the question was, though, in regards to the plan, one of the things we talked about, Mr. Governor, too, is that teachers, the $5 million proposed savings is not in the teacher positions. They will basically go with the students. I mean, I know it's an unsophisticated way of saying, but the kids move, so they got teachers, and the teachers move with them. And in the other position, Mr. Governor's talking about within the needs of the system. But the $5 million did not reflect teacher cuts within that. And that was the operating cost of other cuts and other positions.
But if we want to keep the same pace with declining student enrollments, to keep the same teacher-student ratio, it would be about 20 teachers.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Just one other question. And I went back to my notes, and Commissioner Weaver had mentioned the date of January 30th, and I would like to say, you know, considering the fact that we just learned of this assistance coming late last week, I would say, you know, I would hope that there could be some benefit of not a year delay. I absolutely understand the numbers are the numbers, and hard decisions have to be made. With regard to the scheduling, you know, if we have some time to work with, and I'm not an educator, I'm a mom, and I've done these schedules, so I totally understand it. But I've also had kids who change their mind 15 times during the summer, and there is flexibility in scheduling. So I'm just wondering, with the January 30th date that you mentioned, could we not just consider
scheduling in February, mid-February, the month to do it. And I'm saying that not as an educator, and I don't mean to cause teachers, undue problems with scheduling, but I'm just asking the question.
Well, my response as a former school counselor and someone who's helped with scheduling, the goal of every high school is to try to get schedules out before the end of the year. The further you push that out, the less likely that is. I don't know. I mean, yes, anything certainly is possible. The question is the reality. I want to answer your question first, and I have that
Can I
question
ask
as
you to
well.
speak to that a little bit more clearly, though, because it's not just a student filing a schedule and having made their choices. There are things, the staffing and so forth. Can you speak to that in the programs that you're offering?
We staff high schools based on student schedules. We don't just staff high schools. We hire teachers based on the courses that students select. And so it is not just scheduling. Hiring is contingent on that too. So it's important that we finish the schedules before the end of the school year, or even in early March, so we know where the course selections are. Principals know where their hirings need to be. And I will tell you, as stated many times, we're not people's first choice because of salary. So we have to get out there early and early and early every year to try to attract teachers to come to Carroll County Public Schools. Our problem is not so much as attracting first-year teachers, it's attracting experienced teachers. Our ratio over the past several years is 70% of our new hires are step one first-year teachers, as opposed to 30% coming with experience from other counties. And that's because the higher you are on the salary schedule, the less money you make here as compared to other counties, the way our salaries are structured. And that's something we're going to try to correct. So there's a lot of background things that happen on student schedules. It's not just which student selects which courses. Hiring is based on that. Schedules are laid out, allowing for new students to go to a different school or transfer students to go to a different school, working with the out-of-districts. Everything shoots off when those schedules are done. So it's difficult. I don't know if it can be done, Dick. Not what I'm hearing. It's very difficult right now on a current schedule to get those out. And I guess my question is, I'm not sure what January, or you said January 30th. I'm not sure what date you referred to.
That at the time, 90 days prior to April 30th, get mine back now. I just think there was some time to maybe reevaluate, look at some things, make sure we're making good decisions.
So it's not a date it's a published date. It's a date that you arrived at.
Uses a date back using the information you gave earlier. It's April 30th. I think is your
April 30th is the state deadline.
state deadline. Back many days prior to that.
But the reality is if you took that period of time and came up with any different option at all, then you have to go back out to public hearing. We'd go through another public process. We'd have 60 to 90 days of evaluation during that. Now the question also becomes, what if you go through that period of time and come up with the same three schools? And so, I guess the question is, I mean, it's important, I think, for y'all to realize, and I know you do, the period of time that this has been looked at is longer than your entire legislative session. Okay? You make big decisions on what happens in the state in a 90-day period of time. You hear all the hearings, you get all the information, you have less staff in some cases. I know how hard it is because you don't always have staff. But the period of time that you're saying that a decision can't be made is, with a lot less other issues going on, less than the time of a legislative session. So I would just ask you to consider that. This is the one issue that's been addressed, not the, how many bills do you guys get, like 2,000 something? 1,000. It is unquestionably, but when you have a major issue in front of you, the fact is, it has to be done in that 90-day period of time. We've had every bit that long to look at. So if there's a reason to delay because we're going to get something else out of it or something else that we're going to be able to do, that's a consideration. But if it's just simply go through the process and then in the end end up with the same situation, then that's a concern. If we end up with a different situation, then we're not talking about January 30th. We're talking about much further beyond that. So I think that needs to be considered.
I have a couple of questions or considerations. First of all, Jim, you mentioned that the superintendent makes recommendations and you all make the decision. And I will remind you, historically, the Board of Education has changed the superintendent's recommendations. And sometimes it's been for the better, and sometimes it's not been for the better. It's caused us a lot of problems. But the point is, you are the elected body that is accountable to everyone else. And that's why we have all the hearings and lots of good ideas come out. But a couple of things that I've been hearing, there's a lot of, I guess, misunderstanding of how some of these things work. But one of the issues that I don't think has been addressed clearly, I'm not asking for a response right now because I know we're dealing with this other subject, but the issue of the capital costs and our older schools that are still in need, that are not slated for closure. And some people say, oh, that's just a capital cost. Well, it's like saying that my mortgage doesn't come out of my paycheck. You know, the capital costs of what we have out there that we haven't addressed are going to cost us money down the road. And those monies down the road are going to come from the budget that we could put in the operating budget. So I'm still, for myself, trying to understand all this. I think we need to at least explain how we're going to move forward with some of the old facilities that were recommended several years ago for closure. You know, what are we going to do with them? Because 5 years from now, those schools are just getting older. Those kids are not getting the same kind of facility as everyone else. So capital costs come from the same pocket. It's called taxpayers' pocket, and they can be used for many different things. So I think we've got to look, at least we need to understand what we're going to do with some of the schools that we've said are poor and we asked to have closed a couple of years ago and replaced. And that hasn't been adequately, at least, addressed in my opinion.
Well, Delegate Krebs, if I can answer that, I think that's kind of been an ongoing discussion that we've been having as well with the commissioners, that we've been back and forth addressing, those very questions as well.
Well, keep in mind, as you mentioned, we have 6,000 empty seats. It's going to grow to 8,000 empty seats. We don't see a change. It's sort of hard for me to justify telling taxpayers, anybody, that we're going to put money into that, a new building of any kind, any seats, anywhere in the next 10 years when we have 8,000 empty seats sitting there. So that's an issue that I think we need to make sure we answer adequately. The other thing is, for the North Carroll area that is a concern of mine that I think we need to talk about, if the school were to close, and we're all, believe me, it's painful for everyone, this has to even be considered, but, what will happen to North Carroll High School? What's going to happen to our proposed career and tech that we all have seen as a priority for many, many years? And I know you still think it's a priority, and in our community it's a priority. So I think all of it, and I know it's a lot to put your arms around, but I think that the North Carroll community, knowing what may happen to their facility, it's a beautiful school. And it's one of our best built schools we've ever had in town. It's getting aged, it's definitely aging. But it'd be nice to know, at least that we're trying to reuse the building for something that's positive for our students, and that that's a possibility. And those conversations, I know it's a lot to do, but
I don't know if they haven't happened but we haven't even voted whether or not we're going to close the school yet. So I think it's a bit, in my opinion, insensitive to start talking about this is what we're going to use your school for. Because frankly, as a board member, I'm sitting here trying to make decisions about the validity of closing the school or not. And while that is an important plan, at the end of the day, it is a county building, and those are conversations that need to be happening. No doubt. And I have no doubt that if it were used for an educational purpose that was valued to the entire community, that the North Carroll community would absolutely appreciate that. I think we'd all appreciate that.
But just having the conversation about that we at least would attempt to do something like that would be helpful to folks. I know it's challenging and you have to make one decision before another, but sometimes it makes it a little more palatable if you know that you're going to have.
That's not expressed in the public feedback
It is not at all.
Delegate Krebs. In
We've
fact,
gotten a few comments
we've
to
heard a lot of comments that the decision has already been made. In fact, there were rumors of usage, and that those rumors are false. But what I heard is that you already have this plan because here's the usage of that. I think that the feedback we received was that any hint of any use or designated use of North Carroll High School should it close would be an indication to the community that that was a predetermined decision, which it wasn't. Secondly, I wondered, did you have an opportunity to watch any of the work sessions and the hours of meetings we've had on this?
I did not watch this week. I was out of town.
Well, I was going to say many of the questions that you asked, we had 2 work sessions, and a lot of that discussion we've had in open session, public meetings, and also during our board meetings.
I watched everything you've had except last week.
So I'm saying some of those things have been addressed.
And your issue about it being a predetermined thing, I understand that, but I still think it'd be nice to know that, hey, we don't want to see a facility sit abandoned, and I don't think anybody does. And we need to make sure that, for the educational purposes of our students, and not just even career and tech, we're looking at, I know there's been some ideas out to do something with buildings other than career and technology. To me, that's something that is important for our students, is to make sure that that is part of the discussion. In fact, the North Carroll area uses current technology more than any other part of the county. They have more students that attend for, or they used to. I think that's still the same because they like having their job opportunities. So hopefully we're looking at this comprehensively. And the only good thing, I think Devin mentioned it, it's hard watching parents and it's very difficult, but the fact that people love their schools, I think they love any of our schools, but it's good to know that people care and want to stay in their own schools, and it's a great thing for us. And I know you have a tough job, but at the end of the day, the board is the final decision maker, and I don't envy your position because none of us sitting here have a comprehensive solution that is perfect because it's a challenging decision. So, thank you.
Okay, is there any other specific questions that you feel as if haven't been addressed?
No, Commissioner Wayans, I appreciate the discussion. Again, I think everything that we were uncertain about has been clarified, and I do appreciate that.
Okay, very good. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to take a minute and say I've been involved in politics for more years than I can count, but I've only had the pleasure of representing Carroll County since I guess it was this past January. I live in Howard. I have always loved and admired Carroll County for any number of reasons, including the fact that my daughter lived here for 6 years and 2 of my grandchildren were born here. But I have to say today that I have been just extremely impressed with all of the Carroll County representatives, with commissioners and the Board of Education, and with the responsibility with which they have approached this decision. I think it's incredible. Discussing anything to do with education is so sensitive, and in Howard County it's like 10 on steroids, but it still requires the kind of thoughtful, intelligent discussion and coming to decisions that these representatives have been involved in, and I just had to say that. Thank you.
Delegate Kittleman, thank you.
I just wanted to say one more thing. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I have been on the Board of Education for quite a while, and I really appreciate the way that we've all been able to come together today. I think it's something that we've been hoping for a long time, and so I just wanted to say thank you again, and thank you for working with us, and I hope that this kind of dialogue can continue.
Keeper, on behalf of all of us, we would like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here in beautiful downtown Carroll County also. We certainly do appreciate your efforts and all that you're doing for us.
We want to recognize that Baltimore City is going through the same difficult process.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so
You want a motion to recess?
we're gonna take a motion to recess because we do want to meet with the delegation, which was the principal reason we all came together in the first place here.
All right, so
We're gonna take about a 5-minute recess here.
okay, I was going to make a motion for 10 minutes,
All
just
right,
let
we'll
people
go
get
with
other.
10.
All right, so moved.
Okay. We're in recess for 10 minutes. Thank
You
you
want us
all
to
very
vote?
much.
All in favor?
Oh, yeah, all in favor? Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Quick process.
Okay, we're going to reconvene and actually get to the purpose of the meeting that we scheduled in the first place, which is good news. I know that you have a time constraint. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you need to be in Mount Airy by.
We would like to be leaving by 3:15 if we can, at all possible.
Okay.
We won't hold you captive.
We will not debate. We'll try not to debate every point.
Okay. All right, that's fine. So with that in mind, if you would like to take the lead in this and start walking this right down through, well, the legislative concept, is that what?
Our delegation meeting of the bill requests from everybody in the county.
Including you.
So you can't do that now. I mean, it's a list of 9 and 10 bills. Some are yours, some are from different bills. So you can talk to us about them, but we're actually going to have a public hearing, people come and explain.
Okay, I knew there were some additions though, which is where I was going before I was interrupted. Can we talk about that or not?
Additions?
Didn't you add some? You sent us some? Or do you want to make sure that we talk
Well, I
about
don't
those
think
down there
there's,
too?
one's a liquor bill, one's a turkey hunting on Sundays. And that, yeah, those are the three that were added.
We're only gonna allow turkey hunting in Dennis Frazier's yard, though.
But our legislative agenda isn't always just the commissioner's legislative agenda, it's anything that's asked of us.
Right, right. I get that.
So you can give us input into those additions if you want,
Okay,
and anybody can.
okay.
We may want to talk briefly, Delegate Sally asked for an addition, and this affects Carroll County, it affects the ethics rules, and the new law that went in place 5 years ago to make sure a certain ethics ordinance. We have several jurisdictions. Carroll County is the only county that has not adopted an ethics ordinance yet, and then three of our towns. And there's been Delegate Sally has asked to put something on the agenda to talk about that. It won't affect the county, it will just affect small municipalities. But I will mention that we're the only county in the state so far that has not complied with the ethics and really want something from us or not. That has come up.
Okay.
I'd say we sent a letter, Attorney General, recently, asking for clarification on several points. We're just waiting to hear back for clarification. When we get the clarification, we will move ahead one way or another with adopting the ethics ordinance. We just looked on clarification. I think there's 4 or 5 points in the letter that was sent out that some members of the board didn't feel comfortable with the way it was presented, and we wanted more information on it. From my perspective, that's the reason we haven't acted on this yet. When we get clarification, I think it's from the Attorney General, we're ready to move ahead.
Well, and what I would suggest, the head of the state ethics panel, like the Lord, he has offered to come out and speak to you, and it's good to get it in writing, but I think some of it are misinterpretations of what it says, and we maybe need to get it in writing, but he is very willing to come out and talk to any jurisdiction as to what it says, what's required, and what we have flexibility.
Just a clarification, the letter is not going to the AG yet. It is being reviewed by the towns right now. The towns have it.
It hasn't gone out. Okay.
And we expect to get it out shortly, later this month. And I'll speak strictly for myself. I believe that the representations made by Mr. Lord are wrong. I'm just going to say it. And I have attorneys that have reviewed it and said that his representations are not correct. And we're going to seek an opinion from the Attorney General to clarify that.
I'm just suggesting that we get it taken care of. And, he can come and give his interpretation. The Attorney General then can say whether that's valid or not.
Right, I would like to get taken care of as well, to be correct. I did forget that we were sent the letter out to the towns because their mayors or whatever will look it over and see if they agree with us, and we send one letter in instead of 4 different ones or whatever.
Because I will tell you, this passed 5 years ago. And
Right.
currently, just keep in mind, every elected official in the state and 15,000 state employees have to fill this out.
I don't know why that last Board of Commissioners didn't pass this.
Well, and I don't know either, and maybe it's some misinformation, but I mean, it basically was to protect, to be transparent. We all fill them out, like all the school boards in the state fill them out.
Sure.
Every elected official in the state has to do it, and 15,000 state employees fill the same paperwork out. So if there's discrepancy, we just need, I don't want to be the only county or the only
Right.
town that aren't compliant.
I agree.
Let's get the issues straightened out.
Let us know when you send the letter and so we can follow up if we need help just following up with,
Yeah, carbon copy.
to let you know. Yeah, we'd like to see it. And we can help.
With that in mind, Delegate, would you like to expand a little bit, please?
So basically what's happened is the town of Mount Airy had questioned the law that was changed, and they had expressed that, for some of the smaller towns, have flexibility in their ethics, what they have to fill out, and each town has to come out with their, I don't want to say a guideline, but each town has to write their ethics ordinance according to how the law dictates. And then that ethics ordinance that they have to author goes through the state to be approved. There have been some cities and municipalities in the state of Maryland that have not complied. The state has not agreed with their language. One of those is Mount Airy. Another one in Carroll County is Hampstead. So part of the rift between some of these smaller municipalities is that they believe that the ethics ordinances are too onerous for small towns. They feel that it's hard enough to get people to run for office. And often people don't want to run for office because these ordinances are so intrusive and so personal, and they feel that, when you're putting private information about your spouse and, about your children and that sort of thing, they feel it's more. Now, I know that there's argument. There's people who completely disagree with me. They think that everything should be transparent. I shouldn't say disagree with me, would disagree with the town of Mount Airy. But basically what my bill does is put towns of 10,000 people and under in the same category as the smaller towns that don't have to fill out the full disclosure, but they fill out somewhat of a partial disclosure. And really, the intent is to indicate and to be fully transparent over how your life intersects with the town's business. In other words, if you own stock in a company that's going to be investing in the town and that sort of thing, of course, we want those things to be disclosed. But the concern has been among some of the smaller towns that there are very personal financial pieces of information that have nothing to do with town business, and they feel that it could be used against them in these small towns for nefarious reasons and not reasons that have anything to do with ethical disclosures. So the bill essentially, again, just identifies that towns 10,000 and under will fit in with the same standards that the smaller towns will have. So that's essentially what the bill is.
And currently in law, I don't have my phone with me, but currently in law, we can't, I was told it's possible that we can't just deal with a number because that might be unconstitutional to pick a number. But currently, if you're a small jurisdiction, they look at your size, they look at how much power you have over zoning, over how big your budget is, and they look at it in the context of your town, of many items, and then they can give you a waiver. Windsor has gotten a waiver, and I think Tonytown has a partial waiver. So there are ways to address it, but they have to look at it comprehensively, the whole town, and say how much influence could you have in your town over the police department, over the zoning. So there is some. It went through our committee, Senator Reedy and my committee 5 years ago. And
we voted for it.
We voted for it because we believe there needs to be. We don't like it either. I like filling out all this stuff. I've been filling out for 15, 16 years now. You don't have to put your children down unless they're employed by you, and your spouse is on stuff that is owned jointly with you. So the small towns, I sympathize with what they're saying, but the bottom line is in the small towns, we have to do it, and we have no say over contracts. We're one of 188 people. If you're a town council person, you want to apply.
We vote on the budget, but we're one of 188 people.
Right. So the point is, small areas, you have more influence yourself individually way than we do because we want to apply. So they've got to be careful. This affects all the towns. It affects big towns, little towns. So they're trying to find a balance to make sure that
we understand. I'll just say we understand too. I think I go back and forth on this. I think like we all do because we understand it. I totally believe in transparency, and I actually fill out the forms and put it out there. And at the same time, there are towns that are a lot of towns are less than 1,000 people. There's the town of there's a Vienna in Dorchester, Canada, is like 300 people. So it's right on the river. It's very nice, but somebody like there, you hate for them to have. You just kind of say it's hard enough to get some people to serve on your little town council, and you're voting on a budget, a very tiny budget. So, it's a difficult issue to figure out where to draw the line and how to balance it.
I would suggest getting. The ethics person is very informational to me, and I don't have many questions that the towns do. They want to come out to the towns and talk to them.
I just want to say this because this letter is being treated as attorney-client privileged information until such point as it's approved and released. But I'll just say generically, number one, I think it seems to be the agreement of all the towns that there are components of the law that are arbitrary and capricious, and we believe there are components of the law that are outright unconstitutional and will not survive a challenge if we have to go there, which we hope we don't, because we're hoping the Attorney General will, assuming that he agrees with us, he or she agrees with us, will set this to rights and make the corrections so that this serves a proper public purpose, because right now we believe that this law is written not only does not promote a valid public purpose, it does perhaps more harm than good under certain conditions. So that's what we're looking to do.
Isn't that the same argument though that's been made for the last 5 years? Are we just now getting around to seeking to address that at this point? Because as I recall,
no, we're not just getting
in response to Commissioner Frazier's question, If it had been up to me, we'd have adopted this thing 5 years ago. You may want to ask your colleagues who are holdovers from the last board as to why it's not in place now. But, it has been bandied about for a long time.
Thank you. Just put it
I'll let you get the last
I
word.
just don't like, this all came about, I think, last year, the year before, this year, there was a headline in the newspaper that Carroll County was the only county in the state hadn't done this, and our 3 towns were like, well, we are people that want to be ethical. And if there are issues with it, let's get them resolved, but I don't want to be the only outstanding county or towns in the state for something this important.
So also, just to finish up, the pro and con I'm hearing is, the con that people are saying to me is, well, if we all have to fill out these forms, why is it that some won't and some will? So that's the negative part of what I'm hearing from various different people. But then there's the flip side of it, which is still in some of these small towns, there are, it's hard to get people to run. It's just as hard to get people to step up. And when they do think to step up and then they look at how much personal information they have to disclose, much of which has nothing to do with the town business, that's kind of where, so there's a gray area here between disclosure and how much is disclosure and how much is too intrusive and is a deterrent for people to serve. So I'm hoping that somehow we find that balance in the state legislature. And so anyway, I'm doing this on behalf of the town and Mount Airy. I was asked to do it. Frankly, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm doing this on their behalf because they specifically asked me to
Thank
put this
you.
in.
On behalf of Mount Airy, thank you for taking the time to try to work the agenda. It's my district, and I appreciate your help.
Okay. Any other specific questions for a delegation?
I just want to mention, when we send this agenda out, we're trying to make sure everybody sees that there's some liquor bills on there, we're listening to your liquor board, looks at them, if they don't weigh them, we can silence it. It's impossible to touch everybody. We send it out to 7,000, I sent out 7,000 people to the press, I sent it to every elected official, every town person. So hopefully people get the message that we're not going to necessarily make a phone call to every person and say, you like this bill. We're trying to get people to look at the list and give us their feedback. So we've got the added history. We're not big, like I'm turkey hunting on Sundays. I didn't know we couldn't hunt turkeys on Sundays, so.
I didn't know there were turkeys out there to hunt.
Yeah, you're right there,
Not
you're
many of them
right
out there, so.
Anyway, there's some of the items that are added history.
Okay.
And we'll have the comments open. We'll have our hearing today. People will come and present, and then people can email us or call us, and they will be good until January when we meet again. And if you have anything additional that comes up, I know you're talking about something. It doesn't mean we can't take other things forward,
Right.
but the more we do early on, the better chance we have of success. So we want to do some of this early on.
Okay. Anything else from our standpoint?
I'm assuming that the hold harmless is, I mean, that's not something we think of legislatively, right?
We haven't decided which path to take with that yet.
Okay.
We may put in legislation, or we may not, and that.
I would imagine we won't unless we feel it's needed to help move the ball forward.
I mean, we've had the discussion, we've got to decide strategically.
Right.
When
Sort of a
when you put the forth, and then the committees get to hear about it.
We were going to say, let's lay low, but it's a little hard to lay low now that it's been all over the news. So we'll make
We had a different strategy.
That you may have said.
The ship sailed, and our strategy was to lay low, and now we're going to have to do something different. One issue you guys were emailing us about was, health department, Ed Singer was going to come talk at this meeting, and then you guys were going to talk at the next meeting.
Right.
We're not sure how much time we're going to have, because some people have to leave at the next meeting. So if that issue is important to those of us who have time to stay, we'd be asked to come speak at our property about some issues we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Anything else from our standpoint? Do we have that, Roberta?
And you're coming down to that this meeting.
Yes. Correct. You're providing lunch. Okay.
We'll have the legislators that weren't here for this meeting pay for the lunch.
Come, we voted on that.
Okay, so you're gonna be on at 4 o'clock this afternoon, just for those that are wondering, at the Mount Airy
Town
Council for town.
And I wanted to
Yeah,
mention, the
count.
reason we're having it there.
Right.
I mean, well, it's nice to get around the county, but we had an issue that was dealing with Mount Airy that's now been resolved. where we want to have it there. And we're trying to spread it out, and also we have some things that live far away that need to get back home that we use tonight. So we're trying to make it logistically palatable for everybody instead of letting come to
President, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.